Nick.
Steve.
Today we'll go diving into the bowels.
We are going back down the bowels.
I know, we love the bowels. Why do naturopaths love bowels?
No, because gut is the seat of all health, Steve.
Absolutely it is. Well, today we're talking about fibre, all things fibre, all things short-chain fatty acids, soluble, insoluble, phos, GOS, all these weird things. So listen up, it's a fun one.
Yeah, it is.
Welcome to the ATP Project. You're with your host, Nicole and Steve, and today we're talking about something that's a bit rough on our bowels, roughage, fibre, all that sort of stuff. We're going to talk about acids today, not the drugs.
No, not the drugs.
Not dropping acid. We're not dropping acid. Nick is crying because we're joking around before the podcast, and I make her laugh a bit, but it's quite funny.
I can't see through my eyes at the moment.
It's just a bit blurry. Well, we don't have to worry about our eyes today. We're talking about our bowels today, and we're talking about fibre. I mean, fibre, that's an easy podcast. It's good for you. Eat it. Let's go home. It's late in the afternoon. I want to go home. What do we do?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's more than that, isn't it?
It is.
And where do acids come into it?
Yeah, we're going to talk about acids. We're going to talk about different types of fibre.
Yep.
We're going to talk about the benefits of fibre. But we're also sorry. This is our second podcast recording for the day, and I'm
on drugs, so I'm fine.
Yeah,
I'm coping.
The afternoons are challenging because we're a bit tired. So we're also going to talk about. Is fibre really beneficial? Do we need it to survive? Can we survive without or with minimal fibre?
Yeah.
What happens to the microbiome? So it's going to be a few different things today. So, if you think it's going to be boring, then just no, we'll try and make it as
This is not boring because we did a podcast a few weeks ago. Remember that one? Yeah. Oh, you remember it, don't you? You're going to cry again, aren't you?
Cry again. Yeah.
We talked about the carnivore diet, which is fibre-free.
We did, yeah. Which might be out now, it may not be. Depends. Yes.
It'll be out by now.
Yes,
not right now, but now this is
in the future.
Yeah, in the future.
Yeah.
So time travel's possible. I spoke that about last podcast.
You did.
So fibre, I mean, it's sort of like, we've been told for years you've got to have fibre, and that's the everything. And what is there? Well, where does it all start from? Where do we start to look at fibre?
So early observations, Steve.
Yep.
The 19th to the early 20th century.
Yep, I was around then.
You were just a young fella back then. So in the 1800s, fibre was just basically looked at as roughage. Essentially, didn't have much nutritional value whatsoever.
Useless shit.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty useless. And then in the 1970s, Dr. Dennis Burkitt, famous
Burkitt's lymphoma, which is caused by Epstein-Barr virus. For those who are interested, probably no one. Anyway, but he's pretty famous, isn't he, Burkitt?
Yeah, he's pretty
for cancer. But he's on the fibre. What did he say about fibre?
Yeah, so he observed population. He went to Africa on a tour and observed that the people in Africa had they're on high fibre diets, and they had lower rates of colon cancer, heart disease than in the Western culture.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's. He then sort of popularised the idea of fibre for health, so just health and disease prevention.
Okay, so all right, so that's an observation. It's not the be-all and end-all because there's lots of factors for colon cancer. There's lots of this, lots of that. So going back into the 70s, where was the first guidelines, the birth of the guidelines? What were they all about?
So 1977, the US Dietary Goals Report recommended increasing fibre to prevent chronic conditions. 1989, the National Academy of Sciences suggested low fibre diets contributed to heart disease and digestive disorders.
Okay.
And then in 2002, the Institute of Medicine, which is an independent kind of body that looks at the health, they changed their name to something else, and I can't remember what it is. You know what it is? Yeah. They set the current recommendations, the RDIs for our fibre intake for the day.
And men are higher than women, of course, but what are they?
So 38 grams for men and 25 grams for women.
Jesus, that's a lot of fibre.
It is quite a lot of fibre.
That's about, if you really wanted a lot of fibre, you could eat chia seeds, and if you had about 100 grams of chia seeds, you'd meet your RDA.
Oh, you'd smash that.
In men,
30 something.
Yeah, 34%, so yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of where it originated. And then now, the way we look at fibre, well, there's two schools. Well, there's different opinions on fibre now, and it's not all about just more fibre to reduce these chronic conditions, because there are some cases where less fibre is actually better.
Look, it's interesting. When we did our podcast recently on the carnivore diet, we looked at people with bowel disorders, and they improve dramatically on a fibre-less diet.
Yeah.
Not low fibre, no fibre. And I mean, you've got to start to question that then. It's like, is it a case of one man's food's another man's poison sort of thing? Is it that? Because there's lots of data showing that when people eat more fibre, they get less disease for certain things. And I think that could be a case of association but not causation.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, the more you're in this industry, the more we do so much research and we look at so many papers and so many things. And, you know, the more that we learn, the less we know, you know, and there's so much new stuff that we learn about the body, you know, particularly the microbiome. We're learning so much about it all the time. So, you know, what we knew about the microbiome even 5 years ago, we now know so much more.
Yep.
You know, and we focus on, you know, originally we focused on the lactobacillus bacteria is it for gut health. That's pretty much it.
It was the only bacteria I even learnt in school.
Right. And that's not even a commensal in our gut. So it actually doesn't live there natively. So we're learning so much more. So, you know, we're talking about fibre and there's a lot of really good benefits to fibre and there's a lot of research to show that it is. But is there a lot of things that we still don't know? And just because we're not feeding some of the bacteria that we'll talk about today, is there not other bacteria that we don't know that's in there yet that possibly, you know, could come to the fore to balance things out if we don't have the fibre? Yeah. I mean, look, we take like the Inuits and the Maasai, for instance. They both have extremely low fibre diets. They have low incidence of the chronic conditions.
Chronic disease, they do.
So and it's interesting now that they're more, you know, more global world really, and they're a bit more westernized and they're having more fibres in their diet. They're getting all these Western diseases. Yeah.
It's interesting because when you say to someone go on a higher fibre diet, they tend to eat more plant foods like vegetables and fruits, which are good for you.
Yeah.
But is it the fibre that's causing this or not? And it's very difficult. You don't just take a fibre and you take a fibre-less fruit and vegetable. So they come together.
Yeah.
So is it the fibre part that's helping? I mean, you know, there's plenty of nutrients in fruits and vegetables that are very good for you, nuts and seeds and those sorts of things. So, I mean, it's really interesting. And I'll read a paper here and I'll play it with a straight bat because that means that, you know, and this paper is Fibre Intake and Optimal Health, helping healthcare professionals support people to read dietary recommendations, published in the British Medical Journal 2022. And it basically says you can reduce heart disease, strokes, type 2 diabetes, colorectal cancer, all-cause mortality, and by eating more fibre. So it's kind of a case of, yep, that's what does it. So, but that's associations, that's not causation.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's very different. And you know, just going to the cardiovascular disease, we know that fibre, when your bile makes, your liver makes bile, puts it into the gallbladder squirts it into the small intestine, the fibre traps it and takes it out of your body. So your body has to make more bile from cholesterol.
That's right. Yes.
Now, is cholesterol the enemy or isn't it? Now, if you've got high cholesterol, it is. But if you've got low cholesterol?
Yeah.
What if you've got normal cholesterol? Yeah. You don't want to lower it.
That's right.
Because we don't, sorry to promote ourselves again, but we did a podcast on cholesterol and the levels should be much higher than what's currently recommended.
Yeah, and that's, you know, and everyone gets so worked up about all these things that come out.
Yeah.
And, you know, science is never settled, as we've talked about all the time. So you can't get stuck in one way of thinking when there's so much research coming out to show something different. And, you know, the cholesterol debate's really, people get really really emotionally driven by that. You know, it should be low and it should be this, but we don't know everything. The body is so much smarter than we think we are, and we're learning so much about it, and the body will always adapt and you know, maintain homeostasis. So are there mechanisms and things that we're not really aware of that the body does to, you know, for health that we're still looking at? So we can't say one thing, you know, cholesterol has to be lower and that's it. We don't know. Same with the fibre. We can't say, well, fibre has some amazing health benefits, but not for everybody. So you know, you can't be stuck in one.
And there's all these people online when they cut fibre out of their diet, they get better and feel, well, what are we supposed to say to that? Oh no, you shouldn't. You've got to have fibre. And it's like, this is what everyone comments, and it's like, but you know, is it a nutrient? And there's been doctors showing that it's not, because is it essential? Well, people who eat pure animal diets still do all right. And the whole thing about cholesterol is very interesting because everyone thinks it's so bad and you've got to lower it with fibre. The problem is that if it's that bad, why does your body make it?
That's right.
And why does it make the LDL, the bad cholesterol, if it's so bad for us.
Yeah.
Is it stupid? Is your liver just a dumb idiot of an organ making stuff to kill us? No.
Yeah.
Because for millions of years we've been making cholesterol.
That's right.
And if you eat cholesterol, your risk of dementia drops.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's something going on there that's good for us. But again, going back to the cholesterol, I've got a nice little chart here of the studies because we're into the science part, aren't we?
Yeah.
So, they give them, they gave people in this one of the studies here, randomized controlled trial, 6 grams of concentrated beta-glucan, the fibre, and it reduced the total and LDL cholesterol. Great. And that's for people with high cholesterol. So that would be a good thing. But if you've got low cholesterol, and most people don't know what their cholesterol is, and people who's been measured and said it's 6, that's not high.
No.
No, even LDL 3 is not high.
No.
Yeah, no, you've got to listen to our cholesterol podcast. But giving these people fibres seems to be a beneficial way to lower cholesterol, whether you need it or not. Now, if you need it, it might be a good thing. What if you don't?
That's right, exactly. So we'll talk about the different types of fibre, I guess.
Yeah, let's talk
about it.
And
then we'll talk more into the science and different conditions and things like that. I think most people sort of know about the different types of fibres, but we have soluble fibre and insoluble fibre.
Sure.
We have resistant starch. But soluble fibre, it's like a gel-forming fibre.
Yeah.
So it slows down digestion, helps with blood sugar regulation, lowers cholesterol. So, yeah, it sort of gets like a real gel type of consistency. So flax seeds is a really good example. You soak flax seeds and they get that really gelatinous sort of texture. Fruits, legumes, oats, things like that can find soluble fibre. And then your insoluble fibre. So this is sort of adds bulk to the stool, so it can help with constipation, but it can also make constipation worse.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, good. Yeah.
So leafy greens, nuts, whole seeds and root vegetables and things like that for your insoluble fibre. And then we have our resistant starches, which is a different type of fibre again.
Resistant starch, okay.
Yeah,
so that's when your body can't sort of break it down, but does ferment it a bit. Okay.
Yeah, ferments it a bit. And prebiotic fibres, it's a prebiotic fibre. And then prebiotic fibres generally, they have, I guess you could say, therapeutic effect. We use prebiotic fibres in clinic a lot for different things to manipulate the microbiome. So it helps with good bacteria, feeding good bacteria, ferments bacteria, supports immune function, things like that. So garlic and leeks and
all
onions,
those sort of goodies.
asparagus, that type of thing. And then particular prebiotics that we use in clinic, we can talk a little about like your FOS and your GOS and your inulin and things like that.
FOS and GOS, fructooligosaccharides and galacto-oligosaccharides, just for the people playing along at home. And GOS is our favourite, isn't it? We like GOS.
I love GOS. I use GOS a lot in clinic, and we'll talk about GOS and what it does.
All right.
But, so prebiotics is probably the thing that we sort of focus on mainly in clinic and that sort of thing. So, and then your resistant starch, as we said. So that helps with insulin sensitivity. It acts like a prebiotic.
Yep.
And you can find that in cooked and cooled potatoes and rice, and it actually reduces the carbohydrate content when you've actually cooked it and cooled it. And green bananas and legumes, they have resistant starch.
Very good.
Yeah.
No, they're good fibre ones. And fibres, as you said, it helps with glucose. There was a study done 18 weeks in this particular paper and improved fasting serum glucose. But it's funny because I think I sent you a video of a doctor talking about, well, she was a research scientist about fibre, and she said, no, you don't need it. She said, what about the glucose thing? I said, well, why are you eating so much glucose in the first place? Because
that's right.
Glucose is not an essential, there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate.
No, there's not.
There's essential fatty acids.
Yeah.
Alpha-linolenic acid and linolenic acid, and then you got the 8 to 9 essential amino acids.
Yeah.
But there's no essential carbohydrates because your body can make it.
That's right. Yeah.
So sugar is a bit of a, hit and miss one.
Well, I mean, look, we make ketones on the ketogenic diet, so the body can definitely survive quite well without sugar.
Yep.
Make energy from ketones. And
ketones is great for your brain.
Yeah.
In fact, in the 20s, where it all came from was ketogenic diet for kids with refractory epilepsy. Refractory means can't treat.
Yeah.
Because back then they didn't have Epilim and all the other ones, so the drugs. So they had to put on a diet, like a high ketogenic diet, and worked really good for them.
Yeah.
And and kids had to thrive on them, or they wouldn't be able to function. So there's lots of studies. This study was taken from Therapeutic Bets and Dietary Secrets of Fibre, state-of-the-art review. So these prebiotics make things in the gut from the bacteria, and they make short-chain fatty acids. You want to talk about that yet, or you want to talk about? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we can start talking about
short-chain fatty acids. Now, hang on. These are saturated fats.
They are.
Must be bad for you.
They are, yeah, terrible.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So we're talking about butyrate or butyric acid, propionic acid, and valerianic acid.
Yep.
And there's a few others, but they're the three big
Those are
ones.
the three main ones. I think most
Okay,
people
so
would
tell me about them.
Yeah, okay.
What's
So
the role
short-chain
of-
fatty acids. So they are a byproduct or a metabolite of fermentation from microbes of fibre.
Yes.
Essentially. So different types of fibres. So, so they play a really significant role, important role in the health of our colonocytes, like the cells of our colon, integrity, metabolic function, all of that sort of thing. So they are really important. Butyrate is one I guess most people would probably know more than the rest of them. So that one's particularly for the colon, really important. Helps the gut keep the gut bacteria, gut barrier.
Yep.
Keep the health of the gut bacteria nice and healthy, suppresses inflammation, helps control appetite to a degree.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, and it helps with the production of serotonin in the gut.
Ooh, I love
So
serotonin.
that's butyrate. And then we've got propionate. So this one's very good. This one's very good for helping with blood glucose balance regulation. The propionate reduces inflammation, helps to control appetite as well to a degree. And again, helps with serotonin production. And then we have acetate. And acetate can actually convert to butyrate as well.
Yes,
so
it can.
when we do stool analysis, it does show up the short-chain fatty acid levels. And generally, if you have very high butyrate and lower acetate, it could be that you're converting a lot of it over to butyrate, which is fine.
Yep.
So that one helps with blood glucose metabolism and immune system health. So they're all very important fatty acids.
They are good. And there's a great paper on this. It's called the Symposium on Dietary Fibre and Health, the story so far, in the proceedings of the Nutrition Society 2023. I've got a great review here. I'll put it up to the camera and the beautiful colour diagram. Look at that gorgeous thing. And that gorgeous thing talks exactly what you talk about. And it also impacts the liver. And it does 6 things to the liver, and you're going to love this. Increases insulin sensitivity, increases fat burning, reduces glucose, decreases lipid accumulation, reduces gluconeogenesis, so the breakdown of protein into carbohydrates, and reduces plasma protein. Don't care about that. But that's how it affects the liver. So fibres go in and affect the liver that way, and they also increase satiety in the brain. So they're like nature's Ozempic-y thing, and that's the acetate mainly.
Yeah.
So acetate you can get from acetic acid, which is otherwise known as vinegar.
Yep.
So remember apple cider vinegar and everyone was taking that, or people still do?
I still do. I take it most days. And this is why the acetic acid lost 7 kilos in a month. Did change anything? Just added apple cider vinegar.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Wish we sold it. Now we don't sell it.
I know it doesn't work. It doesn't have the same effect anymore. It did though. But I still take it. This has so many benefits. But yeah, it can help with weight loss for a lot of people.
Well, if you're thinking of the Ozempic-y sort of pathway or semaglutide, those sort of GLP-1 agonists, which make you feel full, try apple cider vinegar. We used to, in the 90s, it was a big thing when I was training, and we thought it was some sort of acid that melted fat away, and we didn't know how it worked.
Yeah.
We didn't know it had this effect on lipogenesis and all this crap.
Yeah.
We just knew that it worked. And apple cider vinegar before meals and blah blah. And it's the acetate, the acetic acid of the vinegar.
Yeah.
So vinegar is about 4% acetic acid, if you're wondering. So I don't ask a question like I won't mention their name in my family saying, "Oh, if acetic acid says that means I should have vinegar on my fish and chips."
Well, don't laugh because my mum used to do that.
No.
But she did it because it helped to break the fat up. So the fat, not the fat in her body, the fat she was eating, so to actually help her feel better because she didn't digest fat well. So if you have a really fatty meal and you're feeling quite sick, apple cider vinegar can actually be quite good. So it increases acid, breaks everything down, increases all that sort of thing. So apple cider vinegar, people scoff at it, but
oh no, I think it's good.
I've seen it worked amazingly for lots of different things, but yeah.
Short-chain fatty acids also boost T cells and reduce the pro-inflammatory cytokines. It reduces lipogenesis, so the formation of new fat cells, and increases leptin, which is where you get the feeling full from. Leptin tells the body you're full.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good sort of resume to have these short-chain fatty acids. And, of course, as you said before, it helps the colonocytes. So these papers are very useful when it comes to that. And my only question to you is, if you've got all these acids in your gut that are supposed to be good for your gut, I thought acids cause cancer.
Well, yes, I've been told that.
Have you heard that?
I have heard that, yes. There's one particular woman getting around that says that. We won't mention her name.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
I have had clients ask my thoughts on things that she said, or they've listened to something she said, and I've said, don't listen to her.
No. I think I know what you mean.
Yeah.
The problem with short-chain fatty acids is they're highly acidic, and acidifying the colon will protect against cancer. Acidifying your stomach, protect against cancer.
Yeah.
Acidifying your blood, protect against cancer. Because if you go, I went for a run this morning, I got sore legs, guess what? I've got lactic what in there? Lactic acid.
Yeah.
Now, if exercise is very protective against getting cancer, just generally, so you build lactic acid up, you're not going to get cancer. You may get cancer, but it reduces the incidence.
Yeah.
Otherwise, exercise will give you cancer.
That's right.
You can't catch. It's very bizarre, this whole thing. And, so this acidifying the colon is very, very good for it. Now, we've got a paper on that. Do you want me to read it to you?
Read it, please, yes.
Published in Cell Reports. And I was just sort of looking at this, but basically it says the paper titled "Acid Adapted Cancer Cells Alkalize Their Cytoplasm by Degrading the Acid Loading Membrane," blah, blah, blah. That's the title of the paper. But it says, and I quote, "Raised pH is thought to be beneficial for tumour progression and invasiveness." So if you want more tumour progression and invasiveness, raise your pH. In other words, lower the acid. Higher pH, lower acid. Yeah. So you don't want that.
No.
So, when we're talking about all these acids, where people are thinking, oh, God, we'll get cancer. What about an alkalizing diet? So alkalizing what? What are they alkalizing?
And that's the thing. I mean, people take an alkalizing diet. Your stomach's very acidic. So anything you're taking in is not going to stay alkaline anyway unless you have very low acids in your stomach. So the whole thing, and you can't alkalize. Your blood stays at a certain pH anyway. That just otherwise you die.
7.35,
so you're going to change
7.45.
that in a hurry. So what are you actually alkalizing?
I know, it's very weird. Do you know one of the best treatments for cancer, IV treatments? Vitamin C. The chemical name vitamin C? Acidic what? Acid. Ascorbic acid.
Acid, yes. Exactly.
And it's like, well, geez, so vitamin C gives you cancer now? Yeah. It just becomes a bit ridiculous.
Yeah, it does.
So we talk about short-chain fatty acids and we talk about acids in the colon. It protects. So it's cool. What else you got there? You got a beautiful graph there.
I have got a good graph here. This actually, I'll hold it up, but I actually won't hold it up because I don't have the link. So I won't hold it up. But this is basically just showing in the gut all what our sort of prebiotic fibres can actually help to increase. So things like your inulin, for instance, can reduce calprotectin. So calprotectin is a marker of inflammation within the colon. So people that have inflammatory bowel diseases and things like that can have very high levels of calprotectin.
Yeah.
So it reduces that. Things like fructooligosaccharides, so your FOS, can reduce hydrogen sulfide producing bacteria.
That's rotten air gas. That's bad for your colon.
Yeah, it can be quite bad, quite inflammatory. And then things like your GOS, which is what we talked about, my favourite, galacto-oligosaccharides.
Yeah.
Glucomannan is another type of prebiotic fibre, which is really amazing. You can find that in those Slendia noodles, the
cognac
root. Yeah, cognac root products.
Yeah, yum.
And inulin reduce beta-glucuronidase levels. So we talked about those in the past, and that's if you have high levels of beta-glucuronidase, you can deconjugate sort of bound
like
toxins and metabolize
hormones.
And they can recirculate. And you can end up with like estrogen dominance and toxic overload and things like that. GOS can reduce hexa-LPS producing bacteria. We've talked about that before. That's a compound that's highly inflammatory, can cause damage to the gut barrier and cause systemic inflammation. Yep. So things like GOS can help with that. GOS can help increase your secretory IgA levels.
And that's an antibody,
good for our immune system. And then, your butyrate acetate propionate, so your pectins, your resistant starches and things like that. So they will help to increase those. So prebiotic fibres can be really beneficial in our gut. So they can help to sort of maintain a really nice balanced gut environment. Yeah. So they do have a lot of really amazing benefits.
God, it's like a who's who of what it does for you. I mean, there's some really good, there's some really good data, and I've got some data here on if you just take vinegar, and it really helps, as you correctly point out. But one of the papers here, white wine vinegar, 6% acetic acid, so it's a bit stronger. When they gave that to individuals, they gave it to 4 females, and you're going to love this, it increased muscle flow by 33%.
Muscle flow?
Yeah, muscle blood flow.
Oh, really? So blood flow to the muscles?
Yeah, blood flow to the muscles.
So it's muscle flow.
Probably should have said that a bit better, shouldn't I? It reduces blood glucose levels, and it's quite remarkable, these papers on it.
Yeah, wow.
This was a great paper. It was published on the short-chain fatty acids, acetate, and body weight control and insulin sensitivity. So guess what it does? It helps you lose weight. So you were right, Nick.
Yeah.
Of course, you're never wrong.
Well, no, I'm wrong a lot of the time. But yeah, look, that's why I bang on about apple cider vinegar a lot.
Yes.
Because it has so many, it just has so many benefits that I see. And it's cheap, it's easily accessible, and it's easy to take.
And the reason why it's such a universal one, because it's got 2 carbons in it, and one end's a methyl group and the other is an acid group. It's a very simple short-chain fatty acid. It's termed as saturated fat, like all these fats we're talking about, which again puts myth that saturated fats are bad for you.
Yes.
Which is just absolutely ludicrous. Hopefully, is that all gone now, or is that still?
I think
you got to avoid fatty
There's
acids.
some people out there that still say stuff like that.
You can buy it from a health food shop. You get MCT.
Yeah.
That's saturated fat.
Yeah.
And it's good for you.
Yeah.
Ghee, butter. These fatty acids, they're all saturated fats.
They are.
How bad can they be? They even lower your cholesterol if you want it lowered.
Yeah, that's right. So some of the benefits. So we'll talk about some of the benefits of fibre, and then we'll go into maybe why fibre may not be so good for some people.
Yeah, let's just do that. Benefits. Hit me with it.
Yeah, so as you said, may lower the risk of heart disease because it reduces LDL cholesterol. In some people, I have clients who have familial hypercholesterolemia, and we really struggle. So in that case, fibre doesn't do much.
No,
but for most people, it can. The high fibre diet can helps regulate blood sugar and insulin. Obviously,
correct.
We talked about may help with weight loss. Look, I'm going to say not so much, because if you have a weight issue, a lot of the times it's not just because you're hungry all the time. There's other issues. There's emotional issues. There's imbalances. There's inflammation. There's so many different things. So I very rarely will find people on a high fibre diet that struggle with their weight. That actually helps to keep them full. Yeah. Really, I don't see that much.
There's lots of factors. They tested, when I was going through all this stuff today, there's lots of studies on rats. And if you control a rat's eating, then it helps. But if you're a human who can just decide to go and eat a chocolate bar anytime they want, rats can't.
No.
They got no money.
Yeah.
They get their little pay pass out. Beep, doesn't work because they're rats. No one's going to trust a rat.
Not yet.
Yeah. So they use the obese sucker rats for these trials, which I love the obese sucker rats.
I know.
Because they're genetically prone to becoming obese.
Yeah.
But you give them acetic acid compared to a placebo, and it helps regulate them. But we're not rats. We're free-living human beings.
Free-living human beings, yeah. And a lot of overeating is emotionally driven anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So, whether you're hungry or not, most people who overeat aren't because it's hungry. Some people, but very few.
And you want me to get an email? It's a nasty email. You ready? I'm going to say this. People don't exercise enough.
No, they don't.
People
they don't
are
move
lazy.
enough. They don't move enough.
Yeah.
People don't move enough. Yeah. So it does have a lot of benefits in the gut, and it can modulate the gut microbiome really amazingly. And we've talked about it so many times. I feel like the last few podcasts we've talked about it a lot. Overall health is the health of your microbiome. So what you're feeding it is sort of how healthy you'll be. So we can modulate with using these different fibres can be really effective. But for some people, it makes them worse.
Well, yeah, and just on that, remember we did a grains podcast last week.
Yeah.
And we talked about how that doesn't increase the Shannon index if you have grains fibre. So
yes. Exactly.
It's got to be good vegetable fruit fibre.
Yeah, it's got to be the fruit fibre. So, so some of the myths about fibre.
So it's essential, isn't it?
Yeah, so no, not essential.
Not essential?
No, as you've said, it's not an essential. There's no such thing as there's essential fatty acids, essential amino acids, no essential fibre.
Yeah, there's no essential fibre. No essential carbohydrates.
No, so it's not essential for us to survive. We can live without it, and as you've shown, people live on ketogenic diets, which are very low fibre.
Yep.
There's the Inuits and the Maasai who were on virtually zero fibre, very, very low fibre. They had a little tiny bit.
Yep. But surely low fibres give you constipation.
Fixes constipation.
No, if you have a low fibre.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, not always.
No.
Not always. So a lot of people, and I do this in clinic quite a bit. I see people who are constipated and they're having so much fibre. It's like, I'm having a lot of fibre. It can make you worse.
Yeah.
So it can actually make people more constipated, depending on the types of fibre that you have. So, if it's more of they're called laxatives, but more of a bulking type of fibre or an osmotic one that draws in water or one that just creates more bulk in the stool. If you're just creating more bulk in the stool, then you can actually start to block yourself up. So, so I find that sometimes reducing fibre can actually improve people's bowel movements. So if you've been having a lot of fibre and you're still constipated, then you might actually be better to reduce it and see how you go. So it's not always fibre all the way for constipation.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
All right, but surely you need to eat whole grains. You need to have whole grains to have fibre. Is that right?
Yeah, well, yes. Go back and listen if it's out, our grains podcast. We did a podcast on grains that we sort of debunked the fact that we don't even need grains. Not essential. We don't eat grains ourselves, and we listen to that podcast if it's out, because we talk all about grains. We don't need that. Fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds have as much fibre, and they also have the other benefits as well over grains. So
now we don't eat grains, but we eat fruits and vegetables and nuts.
I get a lot of fibre in my diet. So,
so do I. I eat healthy foods like that sort of thing, but what we're saying is, do you need that type of fibre? Now, you've got journal articles. These are all reference these things.
Yeah, they're all referencing.
And there's a study here. This is why I'm mentioning references, because you're using a 2025 reference. I think that's the first one for the year. Trends in endocrinology and metabolism.
Yes.
The myth is more fibre is always better.
Yeah. No. So as we know, some people that eat different fibres can have more digestive issues, bloating, inflammation. So depending on what's going on in your gut, and it, again, comes back to the microbiome. So what are you feeding it? If you have an overgrowth of particular bacteria and you're feeding it types of fibres that are feeding that bacteria, your symptoms are going to get worse. So, gas and bloating, obviously constipation, diarrhea, those types of things. So, fermentable fibres can be quite detrimental to a lot of people.
So, Nick, there's some bad bugs in your gut. What if you're loaded with E. coli and you take some fibres with that? What happens?
Yeah, so you can produce more toxins.
Ooh.
It can worsen your inflammatory bowel diseases. Get diarrhea.
Yep.
So highly fermentable fibres and resistant starches can actually be quite bad. They can actually feed that E. coli. And then this is a big one. So Klebsiellas, you know all about Klebsiella.
Yeah, I know all about that. Yeah.
That can be a contributing factor in some autoimmune conditions. It's quite inflammatory.
Very.
So that's what we call a proteobacteria. So it's a commensal, or it's an opportunistic bacteria.
Yeah.
And disulfibria, which is a sulfur-producing bacteria as well. Yeah. So they can cause a lot of inflammation, a lot of inflammatory bowel issues, that type of thing. So things like your FODMAPs, fructooligosaccharides, some GOS foods, and excessive fibre fermentation, that can all, feed these types of bacteria. Bilophila wadsworthia, which I see.
Yeah, that's a nasty one.
Yeah, I see that quite a bit. So this produces hydrogen sulfide, which is quite inflammatory, can damage the gut lining, cause a lot of inflammation.
Yep.
So high-fat diets can pretty much drive that. So with fibre and sulfur-containing foods, which sometimes can be your onion and your garlic and broccolis and things like that.
And so here's the weird thing. I go, and people must be listening to this and going, oh, how do I know I forgot that? Well, do you react to those foods? I mean, some people go, I can eat garlic and I love it, it's great. Some people can't.
Yeah.
And this could be the reason.
And some people say I have a sulfur intolerance, which you can't really.
No, you can't.
The body needs sulfur.
It needs sulfur. It's essential.
But you can react to some sulfur-containing foods, which is different.
Yes.
So you may have high levels of these sulfur-producing bacteria, like the Bilophila wadsworthias. Clostridiums, so things like C. diff. If you have C. diff, which is a really nasty one.
That's a bad one.
So insoluble fibres can feed C. diff, some insoluble fibres. So it all comes down to your microbiome.
Yeah.
What are you growing? And, so people say, well, the fibre or the FODMAPs or these things these types of foods really make me feel worse. Well, that's because your microbiome is not balanced. And that's when we talked about the carnivore diet, same thing, the microbiome, these people that were much better on a carnivore diet, that taking out these fibres that were feeding these more pathogenic and inflammatory microbes and creating the problem. So So therefore, fibre is not great for everybody.
No, it's it could be bad for you, and then you get rid of those bugs. They could be good for you.
That's
so
right. So you
change.
modulate the gut microbiome, and then a lot of times you can include these foods again. Some people choose not to. Some people choose to stay on a carnivore diet. Some people choose to go on a ketogenic diet, which still has a little bit of fibre, but it's a little bit. So fibre is not always great. And as we said, you can take the fibre out and still be quite healthy.
And it's tricky because if you are reacting to a lot of these foods and it sounds a bit like you, go and see a naturopath like Nicole Brown, naturopathy. If you want to see her, she's booked out for weeks in advance, months in advance now. So, but someone like you, because you've got to demystify this and find out what bugs are there, treat those bugs, kill the bugs, and get on with life.
Well, that's the thing. And a lot of people, they just change their diet, but it's, as we've said so many times, it's not the food that's the problem. It's your microbiome's reaction to the food, what you're feeding and what you're growing. So if you go in and find out what's growing in there, and if it shouldn't be growing to the point that it is, then you reduce that, rebalance the gut, and you can bring these foods back in and not react to them. So,
So there's a question, like how many stool tests would you do on your clients? Like what percentage have stool tests?
60%.
It's more than half, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Need it. Yeah. And they're not cheap, but gee, they're worth it because to find out what's going on inside your gut now, we don't work for, I think microbiome is the one.
I use microbiome, microbiome now. But they're the gold standard test. And I use them. But there's others around, but a lot of them aren't really very good. Actually, I only use microbiome, to be honest. But really if you're in Australia, that is. So occupied my way, everyone would get a gut test, but they're expensive, so not everyone can stretch to that. But they're highly, important to have. Well, they're very. I can't think of the word because it's the afternoon. They give you a lot of information.
Oh, they give you loads.
It helps. It helps to cut the time frame between healing because you know exactly what's in there and what you're feeding. So if I, go through a stool analysis with somebody and I say, okay, you've got high levels of methane-producing bacteria or Bilophila Wadsworthia, or this is why if you have these foods that you're reacting because this is feeding this bacteria and this bacteria creates metabolites that then create inflammatory, chemicals and things. So, or ones that create a lot of gas or that type of thing. So, fibre is not good for everybody. And, a lot of people will persist with fibre if they're constipated or, or they're bloated and they say, I need to have more fibre, and they persist, they're making themselves worse. So it's not all about fibre. Modulate the gut microbiome and then you should be able to add fibres back in. But as we've also shown, some cultures don't have a lot of fibre. Well, they didn't used to. Low levels of chronic conditions, and they're very healthy. So
it's very interesting because in the olden days, fibre was it. That's what you needed to eat. It was good for everybody, and everybody had to have that. And but now we're learning about the microbiome and how that changes, and that's part of your body. And so you could be doing yourself harm by having a high fibre diet. Isn't that remarkable?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Nick, that's tricky, but it's about all we've got time for today. But look, get yourself tested, get yourself looked after by a practitioner. Not all fibres are good. So look, if you're in an ideal world, you could have loads of fibre and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But sometimes some foods react with you like that sulfur. Oh, I forgot about all that. And it's like, because people say it's like, you're not sensitive to sulfur. Everyone needs it.
You need sulfur to survive. You're just reacting to the foods because they're feeding a particular bacteria that's overgrown. So as I said, it's not the food's fault. The food is just food. It's what you're feeding the food too. One man's food's another man's poison. That's right. All right, Nick, on that note, we'll leave you and see you next week. Yeah, see you guys. See ya.